everybody, welcome back to Getting Ahead of Ourselves. I'm Allison. Stop looking at my you are cheating by looking at these.
I'm definitely not reading that. I
You
can't
are-
even read
you
it from
are
here.
an absolute
You're holding
liar.
it like behind your microphone. I can't even see.
I was holding it like this. Don't look at
I
it.
can't read upside down.
Okay.
I'm not smart enough for that.
So just like the last episode, I'm going to have Kyle pick a number, and if he has already picked that number, I will say which podcast that was until
12.
we get... Okay, 12 it is. Don't let me finish my sentence. They don't want to know. What is 12? Okay, I think you might like this one a little bit better than the last one.
Okay.
A little bit more up your alley, I might say. Okay.
All right.
So, are you ready to just jump into it?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, I'm glad everybody's here again. We need, like... It almost feels weird just jumping straight to the point because no one even does that anymore. Like, YouTube
Like in
videos...
podcasts?
Just ever. Like, if I watch a YouTube video and I'm like... How to fix bathroom sink. I don't expect them to give me anything until like 6 minutes in.
There was a really early Reddit rule that was like, always jump to a third of the way through the video because there's never anything worth watching
Right.
the first third of the video.
So it's always weird when I turn something on and then it just starts.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
It's just
because I'm expecting
disorienting.
this woman to show up and be like, hi, everybody, welcome back. I just wanted to update you on my 7 kids and my job and how things are going. Here's an entire... history of how sinks have functioned ever, and okay, it's been 15 minutes, so anyway, here's how to fix your sink. So we need like an advertisement or something, just so I can like feel like this
Yeah,
podcast
no, it'd be great if
makes
we could like
sense.
sponsor the podcast or something.
I don't think anyone would ever sponsor this podcast after.
After the last episode.
Yeah, I think we ruined it probably. So here we go.
All right, well, I feel like we padded that out sufficiently, so what's the topic?
All right, so the topic is: are we sure dreams aren't one combined universe? I think your face was more telling than the sound you made, but I think the sound you made was also pretty good. So here's the deal. I think the question is, so there's a lot of questions to be asked about dreams, but as I'm sitting there, melty butter brain, whatever, I'm thinking about everyone has dreams. Most people have dreams, right? And they're all vaguely similar. And the
Yeah.
idea is that maybe our brains are similar and it's just our subconscious speaking to ourselves, but we can't be sure. We're just not sure. So, what if there's actually some sort of, not even alternate universe, but just like, like the in-between, the purgatory, the magical, dusty, sparkly space between heaven and etherealness, earth and like etherealness, and that dreams are just something we all tune into like a video game.
Interesting.
I said that dumb, but I also said it well, which is like we
Well,
go to
I
sleep
feel
and we
like-
channel something that we all experience
I feel
combined.
like we do actually understand at least the mechanics of like where a dream comes from, though, don't we?
I don't know what you mean.
It's a pretty common like cultural belief that dreams are connecting to something larger or are premonitions or somehow like hooking into like
I'd say
a
it's
bigger
more of
universe.
a common theory.
Well, right.
for
it's
some
it's
people.
a common, it shows up in a lot of different cultures throughout history as like the understanding of what a dream is. Dreams have always been kind of mysterious.
I think,
But I do feel like with like MRIs and like brain scans and
No.
stuff at this point, we at least have like, I mean,
I
people
would
have-
say that we don't actually, and I would say that dream theories, like why we dream, how we dream, all that kind of stuff, is more closer to the question of like why we yawn, which is like we have some really good theories about what the purpose of it is and what's happening, but ultimately we can't just like explain it.
That is fair. I have actually even heard that like from what I have read, we're not even entirely sure why we need sleep still. We know that we do, and we kind of understand like the basic functions of it.
Right.
But we don't really know exactly why. Like
Right.
it's like finding a pre-built machine, like finding a computer back in like the medieval ages and being able to figure out how to use it to a degree, but definitely not understanding how it functions.
Right.
Like you wouldn't be able to build one yourself. It's kind of like how we still cannot build a brain, even though we kind of understand.
Well, so what do
more or
you
less how
think
it
dreams are?
I mean, I have to only go off of like information that we know for sure.
Sure.
So I know that dreams are your brain just still operating in like a subconscious state. I don't have like a specific reason to like think that it's something connecting to like a higher plane of existence or anything like that, like some people think, but I won't deny the possibility that we don't really understand how they work or what they are.
So I think what you said is, say it again. You think that
it crosses over into like spiritual stuff for me, which is harder for me to like put a pin in, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. So, and I'm not sure we even, and obviously people can tell me if I'm wrong about this. I'm not sure we know that dreams are subconscious even. We assume that that's what it would be. We assume that we understand subconscious and what it would look like, and when it's active, it would look like dreaming. But we can't actually make any definitive claim that dreaming is truly our subconscious, because then it's tied into...
Well, I mean, so what I have...
let me finish, though. And even if that is true, we haven't been able to tie into the fact that dreams are telling us anything and not just, like, a bunch of random lull images that our brain is just manifesting for no reason, right?
Okay, so I definitely don't think that, like, dreams are premonitions or are connected to, like something that actually is happening in real life. I definitely think it's internal.
Sure.
I just don't have a reason to think anything else.
Speaking
I'm willing
of...
to change my mind, but I have not gotten a reason. I have not been shown a reason to think anything else. I have looked a lot into lucid dreaming, which sounds ridiculous.
Right.
And when I first started reading about it, thought was just like made up.
Yeah.
But that turned out to be real.
Right.
And that was a pretty big jump from
Did you see the article about how scientists have now figured out a way to communicate with people in their lucid dreams?
I did.
Yeah.
Which was fascinating.
I didn't read it. I should probably have read it. But I didn't.
Yeah. Well, and that's really weird, especially because of the way that like it just perception is so completely different, you know, like time dilation and stuff is so different, like within dreams and reality.
Well, I mean, what that would technically mean is if it is our subconscious, we've literally found a way to communicate with our unconscious self.
Yes, and actually lucid dreaming is used for that a lot.
But we've never communicated with other people.
Right, because that isn't theoretically possible.
Well, then how did it happen? Anyway, there was probably just a gotcha headline, but...
It probably was, but I almost definitely what it was talking about is the scientist, was physically poking the person and they were figuring out how to translate that into, like understanding within the dream or something.
Man.
Not they weren't hooking themselves up to, like, an Inception device or something and, like, talking to each other cross-dream.
My dream last night,
what that meant.
I don't know why. It was just one of those bad dreams. There was no story. Nothing was happening. It was just a constant dream of, I was running around this campgrounds, multiple little cabins and stuff, and we lived in a little I don't know, outskirts rurally neighborhood, but all the homes were just small cabiny kind of things. And for whatever reason, I was being chased by a swarm of bees the whole time. And
that makes sense for you.
It does. I have these dreams sort of a lot. And then on top of it, it was every time I took a step in the grass, there were bees in the grass and it stung the bottom of my feet. So my dream, I just remember my dream was a constant anxiety pain thing. It happened all night. I woke up and my jaw hurt so bad from clenching, and I woke up and I felt my body shake and relax a little bit because I had been curled up in a ball. Cause if you experience pain, you just kind of tuck in. And that was my dream last night. Was just a constant state of feeling pain.
So yeah, I think the things that dreams tell us about how our brain operates is way more interesting than the idea that they could be from some external force. I almost feel like the idea that they are messages from beyond or some connection to something else is honestly a weird holdover from consciousness developing and this weird sense that our thoughts aren't our own. Mm-hmm. I think dreams are entirely our own, entirely within our own heads, and probably provide a really probably one of the more easily accessible understandings of how our brain processes information, as far as our current technological advancement is.
I think that you can't really talk about our dreams one big connective universe without thinking that are not dreams big one connected universe.
Right,
you'd have to assume that there's just sort of some sort of floating invisible imaginary brain connection between every individual. When we think, we tap into a file, basically, like some sort of ethereal, mystical file. And every time we think, we're sharing that sort of conscious mind, which, if I'm correct, is definitely, like, there are varieties of that type of belief all over the world.
Yeah, no,
which is that
it's
because
pretty
we all
common.
function very similarly, we're kind of tuning into the same zone, I guess,
Right.
of thought.
Well, here's something kind of interesting, and this is kind of explored by like different sci-fi things, like Inception or like The Matrix or different things like that, which is like it. I guess it's like it almost ties into like the simulation theory, which is like how sure can you be at any given time that you're not dreaming? I guess is where I was getting to. The dreams teaching you about how your brain works is like, because the way lucid dreaming works is if you can become aware enough with it while you're sleeping that you are dreaming and still maintain the dream, you can experience things in a dream as clearly as you can, like right now. Like if you're sitting here listening to this podcast, looking around, like seeing things with your eyes, it would look that sharp. It would feel as real as it does right now. And that sounds insane. And I would, like, the things that I would read would talk about that, and I'd be like, there's no way that's not an exaggeration. That just doesn't make any sense. And so I kind of played with it for a couple months because it takes a while to train your brain to do it correctly.
Yeah.
Because generally your brain throws out dreams because that doesn't count as valuable information. So you have to train yourself to remember your dreams, and then you have to train yourself to recognize that you're dreaming, and then you have to train yourself to stay in the dream once you recognize that you're dreaming and not wake up immediately. So it takes some time, but I managed to do it one time, and it completely worked exactly the way it was described. I still remember it vividly, just like I remember other memories, and I remember waking up being like, I became aware I was dreaming within like my parents' house. And I was able to like lean down and like examine the carpet fibers individually and like look around and like smell things, hear things, feel things the exact same way as if I had been awake.
Right.
And it was weird. And it's very weird that your brain can do that, like, because it doesn't feel like that should work that way.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, all your current experience is your brain interpreting electrical signals.
Yeah.
So if it's just creating those separately, it would feel the same. This is the Matrix premise, right? It's like you just plug a turkey baster size spike into the back of your head.
I have two things to say.
Okay.
One, your lucid dreaming now will forever remind me of the dream that I had, where in the dream I woke up and knew I was lucid dreaming. In the dream, I was awake. Okay. In my dream, I was dreaming that I was lucid dreaming.
Right.
And in the lucid
Which
dream...
is really annoying, because I've also done that.
Right, and in that dream, I was like, oh God, how do I wake myself up? How do I wake myself up? In the dream, I was saying that. I was like, how do I wake up? How do I wake up? And then I remembered in the dream that I was dreaming that you had told me the tricks for waking yourself up during lucid dreaming, which
or
is
for
like...
just checking to see if you're dreaming.
Right, for checking,
the dream checks.
I was having a hard time in my own dream telling the difference between reality and dreaming, even though there was no actual reality because it was all a dream.
Which is weird, because you were probably just dreaming that you were lucid dreaming, which is different than actually lucid dreaming.
Right, and so in that dream, I remember doing all the checks. I looked for things like clocks and shampoo bottles and stuff. And what was annoying...
Just text in different
But
places.
it was there. That's what was annoying, was since it was a real dream and not a lucid dream, I can do whatever I want, but I'm not connecting to it. So in my dream, where I couldn't tell the difference between dreaming or reality, I checked like a shampoo bottle and it had words that I could read on it. And so I'm like, oh shit, I'm trapped in my own lucid dream. And then I woke up from all of that and felt like a normal human again and was just like, wow, that was insane. I hate that any of that happened. But the second thing I was going to say, because that was just a story. The second thing I was going to say is, when you think about it, our brains never like turn off or anything. So they're always going. We just do it differently when we're dreaming. And we're sleeping a third of our lives, right? Like a whole third of our day is just sleeping.
Yeah.
So a third of our reality is exclusively the dream state. And so it's really annoying that for 2/3 of our reality, we can constantly communicate with each other. It seems like that extra third of reality that we all simultaneously experience, we should be able to communicate with each other to some degree. There needs to be some sort of crossover between like dreaming and communication with other people. It just seems like that's the natural way that it should go.
But I think the dreaming is the lower state. I think we raise out of that state by being awake, and that's when we get to communicate with each other. Like I've heard the parts where this is gonna get existentially weird. This podcast probably, but like
I'm already disassociating.
I've heard people describe spiritual experiences as almost like breaking out of a dream briefly.
Yeah.
And then I to me, I'm not really a spiritual person at this point in my life.
Yeah.
I'm kind of exploring some of it again. But I've always kind of thought that if there is something bigger than our life as we know it, it probably feels very similar to waking up from a dream.
Okay.
I can't think of another way to I can't think of a better analogy than that to actually for my current stupid person brain to wrap my mind around what that would be like, because you wouldn't be able to know when you're dreaming, you don't remember what it's like to not be dreaming. Right. And so I feel like if there is like a greater plane, a greater I don't know, version of existing beyond life, it's got to be a similar sort of comparison where it's like there is no way for us to currently remember or think about
like
or
if there's
understand
anything
what
further,
it's like to be, in giant quotes, awake, right?
So if there's anything further, then the only thing is we wake up from this reality even more so.
That's kind of how, like, to me, that's the only way I've really been able to make sense of what an afterlife would be, because nothing else really makes any sense. I mean, you wouldn't just, like, time and space are too confusing and actually non-linear compared to how we think of them for it wouldn't be the good place. You wouldn't just die and then your conscious memory continues, except now you're in, a land where shrimp fly through the sky or whatever. Like that doesn't seem like what would happen. You'd have to like, your vision would have to sort of like broaden, your understanding would expand. And I've heard people kind of describe it that way, when they talk about having spiritual experiences or like going really deep in meditation or things like that, where like it feels like your mind opens to these kind of experiences. But even in like I'm bringing it in early because it's relevant actually this time, the Buddha's original writings,
I need to just say something real fast. Disclaimer, any weird, gross noises, like smacking noises, breathing noises, Gannon has decided to plop his face right in front of the camera.
It's our dog, it is not Allison.
It is not me, the licking, all the... Yeah, that was him. So just...
Anyway, the Buddha's original writings talk about how, like, in his words, he's talking about, like, I have come to understand the way things work. I can't put them into words because it doesn't... we are too limited. Like, there's no way for me to explain. Sure. And also, there's multiple parts of his writing where it's like, I understand more than I'm saying. It's just not worth saying all of it. Like, there's no point in going into all of these details because it's not relevant to you coming to a place where you can just understand them yourself. So it's like, he's like, that's sort of like the whole, the teachings of Buddhism are about you getting there on your own because there's no physical way for you to be told how the things work.
Right.
That's what he says. That's what this person and other people who have like supposedly reached enlightenment have described.
Okay.
So I guess to answer your question, I feel like we may already be doing what you're saying right now. Maybe we're dreaming. So? Maybe we're dreaming now, and we're talking to each other. Maybe that's what's happening.
Oh,
maybe
I see.
Maybe we're in the dream and we're communicating with each other and we're making a podcast for other people. And
so then dreaming truly is like the most base state.
Yeah. I mean,
but that doesn't even make sense, though, because dreaming is supposed to be like the... Well, I take that back. I was going to say dreaming is supposed to be like the sign of consciousness, but animals dream and...
This also reminds me of a horrible thing I read once, which was just like a shower thought or something.
Sure.
It just said like, what if being asleep is actually the base state of of our existence, and waking up is only a like freak state that happens because we have to find and consume nutrients to stay alive. But like sleeping is the default state, and that's why we spend so much of our life asleep. And like awake is only a thing because we have to feed ourselves.
I mean, I think that's a fascinating theory. It just seems like something we would have evolved out of.
It hurts my brain.
I mean,
we evolved out of it. We would have evolved out of being awake. Being awake would be the unnatural part of that existence. we would just sleep and like photosynthesize like a plant.
All right, let me wrestle the dog for a minute.
Okay.
Yep, there we go. Get out of it. Okay.
But yeah, I think it's
Right,
kind of,
okay.
yeah.
Well, all right, so you went a very different direction.
I just had to throw that out there.
You just had to throw 20 minutes worth of information out there, just casually, just
I just
dropping
meant
it.
the last thing, the weird, the
Oh no,
the being
I
awake
think
thing.
I think that's all fascinating. I just don't. Those are all interesting and yet entirely different theories than the prompt that was brought up. But I think they're good. I think they beg even more interesting and different questions. But the original concept of like, what if dreaming was some kind of like hive mind we could all essentially tap into, right? Well, now I don't even know where to go with that, honestly, because I feel like we went so many different directions.
True. I feel like the answer is probably just an immediate no, because I think it would be too easy to prove true if it were.
You think so?
I think empirically it would be, like, we can't prove that we're not dreaming right now. That's
Right.
kind of harder to do. Like, or like, again, dreaming in quotes.
Well,
like,
okay, let me...
But we could prove that I didn't talk to you in my dream, because at some point, two people would remember the event.
Right.
Enough to then come share it, even though it never happened in real life.
Well, so
right?
what if... Okay, so the idea of this topic, I think, is kind of interesting, because it begs the question of there being a constant state that does exist, and we merely tap into it, which means essentially there is an ongoing, constantly functioning, quote-unquote, universe that exists, and when we sleep, we just sort of tune into whatever that is. What if dreams are literally just the sound of a combined universe happening all at once, and we just like occasionally just like pass out and then just like tune into it or whatever, you know?
I don't know what that means.
I just mean, like, if the idea is that dreaming is merely us entering into a state that already exists, like a file or a universe or a bubble plant, whatever you want to call it, some sort of thing that is constantly in existence that we merely tune into, it means that it's ongoing at all times. We just open the door when we fall asleep to it, but that it's already there. And it could be essentially anything. We could theorize about what that would be.
Sure.
If that's how it worked.
Yes, we could.
We can't not prove that it's not how it works.
No. But in that case, it is an entirely fictional premise, in which, yes, we could theorize on what that would look like.
Everything you've said has also been an entirely fictional premise.
Yeah, I guess, to a degree.
Your theory that if we wake up further, that if we were to evolve, we would wake up even further from the state of mind that we're in is
I'm not
really
claiming
not
anything as fact. I
didn't either. I didn't sit around talking to you about how fictional and dumb yours sounded. I'm just saying if we go the opposite direction.
I'm not saying yours is fictional and dumb. I'm saying I don't know how to theorize about it because it is just because it's a theoretical sort of story. Like I'm picturing like I'm picturing Soul. Like the Pixar movie that just came out.
Oh, sure.
Like that's what that's reminding me of.
Well, but that's different. So do you feel like there's some kind of correlation between what death feels like and what dreaming feels like?
I have no idea. I've never experienced death. I don't know.
You don't have to experience death to theorize that it would be similar to dreaming.
I assume it feels like nothing because your brain isn't functioning. I mean, dreaming is happening because your brain is doing things while you're unconscious. Like we can show that like it's a different thing that's happening in a non-living brain and a sleeping brain.
Right.
So I assume it doesn't feel anything alike.
Do you think there's ever someone who's literally never had a dream in their life? Is it even possible?
I don't think you can not have dreams, but I think there's different levels of remembering them. Because I don't dream as much as you do, but in reality, I just don't remember my dreams as much as you do. I just sleep heavier for some reason.
Okay.
I don't really know how that works, but like the same levels of, they have tested this, like the same levels of brain activity happen in pretty much everyone. It's just that people have different levels of being able to remember what they were dreaming about.
You say
when they wake
pretty
up.
much everyone. Do you mean everyone?
I mean everyone, asterisk, obviously with some exceptions, like literally everything else in the entire world.
Okay, but the people who are exceptions, does that mean that they just never dream?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think it's possible, right?
I don't think I have never heard of a case of somebody literally just like going brain silent while they're sleeping. I've never heard of that happening. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I've just never read about it or heard about it.
So are we sure that dreams and brain activity are exactly the same thing? Like, I obviously know you need the brain activity to have dreams, but you're obviously not dead when you're sleeping.
Well, there are certain parts of your brain that more or less turn off when you're sleeping. Like dreams tend to come from one area. There are like if you look at like the brain maps where it like lights up in different areas, parts of it go dark while you're sleeping.
Okay.
And like dreams come from like specific places, I believe. I don't know nearly enough about like how brains work to even guess at like the details of that.
Right.
I just know that like dream activity looks distinctly different than awake activity.
Okay.
I do know that.
Sure.
I don't know how different dream activity is from person to person.
Right. Are you one of those people that kind of feels like maybe people might have superpowers like unlocked deep in their brain that we just haven't like tuned into?
The more I understand about how long humanity has existed, the less and less special each individual generation and especially ours feels. So no, I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like if that was real, then it has already happened.
That was such a fascinating thing to say. Why do you think that time is the thing that establishes that to be untrue?
I just think it's a lot easier to feel like you're special if the sample size is smaller.
Okay.
But when you're aware that like humanity, or if you were like out of 100 people, this one, I mean, it's just easier to go like, this is probably unique if there's only this number of options available, right? But like if you know that like in all of human history, which has been an uncountable number of people, there's an estimate, but like nobody actually knows because human beings existed 100,000 years ago and nothing they ever did would survive that test of time. So like we just don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows anything that happened even like 2,000 years ago, really. So
I found a really interesting thing on TikTok. It was talking about. Am I still being recorded?
Yeah, should be. Did you get lost? You get lost inside the podcast dream world?
I guess so. It was about a YouTube channel that correctly predicted every single death of 2020. Every single one of them.
I have an immediate first question.
Back in like 2017.
Did they predict other things that didn't happen?
Did they predict? I don't know. I haven't checked it out. Did they predict things that did not happen?
Yeah, that would be my first question, because I also could predict everything that happened in 1 year if I predicted literally everything.
They didn't predict everything. They only predict people's deaths.
Well, sure.
And I think that's the thing. And so what's interesting is it was like
I just felt like it's a version of this that plays the odds pretty easily and isn't actually that impressive.
Oh, I think that's the general understanding for any anything like that.
Any
like,
sort of fortune telling.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it was like back in 2017 people were posting screenshots, but it had things like it's just like a little eye symbol and it pops up and it just tells you like who's going to die. And one of them was Kobe Bryant, which is why everyone was super freaked out, because who would predict Kobe Bryant died in 2020? And I don't think it just says that they die. It also vaguely says how they die. And it was funny because a lot of the comments were like, at this point, this isn't like fortune telling. This is premeditated murder. Like, there's no way that this person can predict all of these deaths without being heavily involved in some of them. So I thought that was interesting. I want you and I to go through that at some point and just see what we think of it. I probably won't, because I'm too spooked by that kind of stuff. I'm very gullible to the paranormal, so I ain't gonna. That actually
reminds me of an analogy that helped me sort of like understand sort of some of the fallacies of faith reasoning back when I was first moving away from like being Christian,
right?
And of like and taking finding meaning where there wasn't any, I guess.
Right.
The analogy was like if you had a lineup like a firing squad, execution squad, right?
Yeah.
All aiming at one person.
Mm-hmm.
And they all they're all expert marksmen, right?
Right.
And they all fire, and every one of them miss. What is more likely, that there was just some miraculous event that every one of them missed, or that someone tampered with the guns? And that was like one of the first like thought experiments that I can clearly remember of like there are more logical explanations that work most of the time than,
even if the logical explanations are truly like outstanding within themselves, they're still more likely to happen
than like the just pure chance explanation that some people will still attribute to things.
That's so interesting, but the problem is that you should be able to prove that.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Like you should be able to prove
that.
Well, but right, so but in that scenario, what if the guns are checked?
Well,
that's my point.
But the point was about critical thinking in the moment, not about like how those events would play. Yes, it is technically possible that every single one of them missed. That was the point of it, right? It's like, yes, that is possible, but isn't it more likely that something else happened?
That's such a fascinating thought experiment.
Probability
How did
is
people
very
find
weird.
Thought experiments, honestly? I wish I had had more growing up.
What, by just thinking? What do you mean?
I guess. I don't know. I feel like thought experiments were always introduced to me and not
you mean like existing ones? I
Yeah.
assume just the internet. I assume just communication just increased the ability to share those kind of things. I mean, books first, but like if you didn't physically have the book in your hand, you were just out of luck until the internet came along. What were we talking about? Dreams or something?
Oh, right, dreams. Yeah. I just feel like we kind of made it to the end of dreams, I guess, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel like you have any further to go on the concept of like, what if it was some sort of large.
I guess I don't. I was actually a little bit worried when you brought it up that we wouldn't be able to get much out of it because I just feel like.
Well, because if we talked about if it was real, we would have to basically come up with an entire system on our own.
I just feel like it would be provable. It's one of many kind of things. I know there are people who believe that's real and that they can communicate with people in dreams and see things that exist in real life and that they have evidence of that happening. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if that was, it's always weird to me that those kinds of things are somehow still secret if they're real.
Right.
Like we would know.
Right.
At this point in all of human history, with everybody who would ever want to try and test those things, we would know if you could astrally project or if you could see the future through a dream or if you could there would be more ways to test. It's too fallible to be a hard truth.
Yeah.
There might be some truth to it, but there's no way to scientifically measure it right now, or we would have done it, I guess is what it is.
That's a good point.
And so yeah, that's more or less what it is. It's just kind of hard to me, again, it's more interesting to look into what it means internally within your own mind than what it means than what dreams would mean to the larger world.
I think that's totally fair. And we've made it to the end of this podcast. You already tied it into Buddhism, so there isn't even like a way to end it. Look, you did all the things.
Thanks for joining for cool, chill, spiritual vibes episode.
It was a nice come down after the last one. Just a nice,
yeah, it was.
Like, let's get back to a normal space.
We just rubber banded really hard in two different directions these last two.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be, though. You know, like that's where it is.
Yeah.
This podcast is a spectrum. Like, what are dreams and how do we revert back to dinosaurs? Which I know you have a problem with the phrasing of that. I won't change it. Okay, so thanks
sorry. I was just saying, it is just called getting ahead of ourselves. All we have to do is talk about things we definitely aren't qualified to talk about, and I think we're still within the purview of the show.
I feel like we have done that perfectly.
I agree.
Okay, thanks everybody for listening. We will see you on the next podcast. Let us know your thoughts on literally anything we talk about. Maybe not the meat one. Maybe that one should just go. We should just turn comments off for that.